So already Samsung has released quite a few new smartphones in 2024, and God knows I've reviewed most of them. Not many budget-friendly blowers so far, that is until the Galaxy A35 5G, which is just freshly launched here in Blighty. And for a price of just £339, you get a distinctively Samsung smartphone, which could almost pass as one of those flagships, complete with a 6.6-inch Super AMOLED display, stereo speakers, a big old battery, respectable gaming chops, and a 50 meg main camera. My SIM has been slipped inside of the A35 for a few days now, so what's it all about? Well, here's my review, and for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do plug subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! So design-wise, not much has really changed over this past year. The Galaxy A35 5G is yet another 6.6-incher, just like the old A34. Absolutely bugger all surprises when it comes to that design. The Galaxy A35 looks like a Samsung smartphone, looks like every other Samsung smartphone. It could practically pass as one of those wallet drain and S-series flagships, apart from little touches like you've got a plastic frame here. And also the bright and bold colour options for the A35. They look rather splendid, but they certainly don't scream premium. As you can see, I opted for the slightly dazzling lemony option, which is probably called like Awesome Citrus or something. Or Awesome What My Wii Looks Like After a Night Out on the Town. And of course the fact that you've got a glossy back means that it does get a wee bit smudgy and grimy at times. You'll definitely want to keep some sort of cleaning cloth handy if you can't stand muck. A few little complaints. The bezels surrounding that display are a wee bit chunky, so it's quite a full-sized smartphone, shall we say, and you've got those flat iPhone style edges which aren't the most comfortable to clutch. But in better news, you've got Gorilla Glass Victus Plus up front, which so far, touch wood, no scratches or scuffs anywhere on there, despite the fact I haven't exactly been treating this thing with much respect. And the Galaxy A35 is also IP67 water and dust resistant, so no worries if it gets very moist indeed, even takes the wee tumble into a sink or a bathtub, should be absolutely fine. And at this sort of price, that's still pretty rare, so yeah, great to see. Now when you want to play with your shiny new pocket rocket, well, you do have an in-display fingerprint sensor, although this does seem to take a while to react to your thumbs. Not the nippiest acting sensor in the world, but you do have face recognition to back that up as well, so you can just push that power button and eventually you'll again be into your desktops. If nothing else, it helps to build the suspense a wee bit. Oh, will I have any messages? Will I have any messages? No. And Samsung fans should know what to expect software-wise. Of course, it's Android 14 with Sammy's own OneUI 6.1 launcher slapped on top. I quite like the layout and the general visual aesthetics of OneUI 6. What I'm not so keen on is the fact that Samsung has basically doubled up on all of those Google apps and services. So you've got 2 smart home apps, 2 web browsers, 2 health trackers, 2 smartphone assistants, the whole whack. Then you've got plenty of great stuff packed into OneUI as well, the likes of the modes and routines, which can help to automate your life. And all that Samsung Knox security shenanigans to keep your smartphone safeguarded. Of course, you don't quite get the same fully featured OneUI 6.1 experience here on the Galaxy A35 compared with those S-series flagship phones. So, for instance, all that AI shenanigans that Samsung can't help but bang on about in every single advert, those are pretty much all missing in action here on the Galaxy A35. But hey, we do have a good bit of Bigsby, whoopity f***ing do.
I didn't understand that.
That does not surprise me, Bigsby. I just adore how incessantly cheery she is as she basically tells you she's absolutely f***ing worthless.
I didn't understand that.
As for the storage, well, this starts at a meager 128 gigs, but you can upgrade to 256 for an extra 50 quid, which isn't atrocious. And the great news is the Galaxy A35 actually supports micro SD memory cards in that second SIM slot. Now you've also got yourself a good bit of eSIM support, which is great news if you're buggering off abroad just for a few days. Get yourself a bit of super cheap roaming action on the go via a bit of Holofly or Eralo or whatever. And as always, Samsung, bit of a geezer when it comes to guaranteed updates on its smartphones. So the Galaxy A35 comes with 4 OS updates and 5 years of security patching, which you won't get out of many other phones at this sort of price. And at this sort of £300 to £400 price point these days, you can expect a gorgeous OLED display, and the Samsung Galaxy A35 5G certainly doesn't let you down here. That 6.6-inch Super AMOLED is punchy, it's poppy, it's bright, it's crisp. You've got a full HD plus resolution, so your photos, your movies, your games and whatnot will all look nice and crisp. And by default, that screen is set to vivid color mode, which certainly shines when you're enjoying a bit of animation or whatever. You can change it to natural mode if you prefer more realistic, authentic output. And while the Galaxy A35 doesn't support HDR playback in the likes of Netflix, the contrast is still pretty sharp. You've got nice deep blacks, bright clean whites. And that screen also maxes out at around 1000 nits, so on a really bright sunshiny day you will be squinting a bit, struggling to see what is going on, but otherwise here in Blighty certainly it's absolutely fine, that permanently grey overcast sky. And the refresh rate maxes out at 120Hz, so certainly zipping around that whole OneUI experience feels as smooth as my bonce if you smothered it in lard. And the Galaxy A35 also boasts a stereo speaker output. Let's just bump up that volume, see what we're working with.
Is Kiss Launcher, which sadly has bugger all to do with those mental glam rock pensioners. Sad.
It's not the absolute loudest audio output in the world when you max it out, but the clarity remains strong and it's just about good enough to hear what is going on if you are working in a busy kitchen or something. It's also more than loud enough to annoy the piss out of everyone on your train carriage if you decide to watch Mrs. Brown's Boys without the use of headphones, which, by the way, if you do that, you absolutely suck. So now let's have a shufty at the performance, and Samsung has slapped its very own Exynos 1380 chipset into the Galaxy A35. It's getting on a wee bit, been found in a couple of other old Galaxy phones. I found that the everyday performance can be a little bit hit and miss. Usually, to be fair, it's perfectly fine. You know, apps, once you tap them, they load up reasonably quickly. You can have quite a lot of stuff open in the background, no worries. But occasionally, you know, you'll load up the camera app and you'll go to take a photo and it'll just be that little bit slow, just enough to just slightly piss you off. Which is one of the reasons my expectation levels were about scrotum level when I went into my gaming tests. But you know what? The Galaxy A35 actually handles the likes of Genshin Impact, quite a demanding Android title, pretty well. Even on the higher graphics settings, sure, the frame rate judded a fair bit here and there, but the game remained playable. There's only the occasional wee bit of shonkiness, and if you do keep the graphics on these sort of low to medium settings, you'll get a fairly fluid frame rate. And while the back end of the Galaxy A35 did start to get a wee bit toasty after just 20 or 30 minutes of Genshin Impact action, thankfully it didn't seem to get any worse than that. Certainly the app didn't shut down, my fingers didn't singe, and I didn't even really notice any throttling of the overall performance. Of course, Samsung's gaming mode is bare bones at best, certainly put to shame by a lot of rivals. So if you're a hardcore gamer, you might want to look elsewhere, but otherwise, as I say, the performance on here actually not as bad as you might expect. Now, I wasn't hugely optimistic about the battery life here on the Galaxy A35 either, especially the first week or so with most Samsung smartphones. The battery life tends to be pretty bloody dreadful. And actually the longevity here has been really rather impressive these last few days. So most days I get over 6 hours of screen on time, sometimes 7 or 8, including a good bit of camera play, lots of video streaming, audio streaming in the background, etc. And I tend to face plant my pillow in the evenings with at least 25% battery life remaining, which, yeah, really solid. So even more demanding power users should be quite happy here. And it's just as well that the battery life is good on the Galaxy A35 because unfortunately the battery recharging speeds are total donkey drippings. Normally when I bung a cable in it at night, even if it's got around 25 to 30% battery already in there, it'll still report that it'll take about an hour and a half to fill it back up, which is pretty much bang on. And sadly, there's no wireless charging support either. And let's end this Galaxy A35 5G review with another highlight, a squint at that there camera tech. Samsung has slapped on a triple lens setup headlined by a 50 megapixel primary shooter with optical image stabilization. And this captures 12 meg photos by default. You can bump up to the maximum 50 meg resolution if the conditions are really good with a quick poke up here. And I gotta say, I'm impressed by the images that the Galaxy A35 5G has spaffed out these last few days. It's a capable, dependable wee snapper even when the conditions are a bit arse. So for instance, HDR situations with strong contrast, a lot of harsh backlight and stuff like that. Generally, this phone copes admirably, even on auto mode. Same goes for lower light conditions as well. You still get some pretty rich tones seeping through. And overall, Samsung seems to have calmed things down a bit when it comes to the processing, so your images look reasonably natural. And naturally, you've got the full complement of bonus Samsung modes as well. So you've got a portrait mode, which adds a nice bokeh style effect to your photo. You can tweak this after you've taken the shot. You've got a food mode if you want to take a picture of your scran before you shovel it down your throat. Night mode just to boost the brightness of those low light shots as long as you can keep your hand and your subject really still. And good old single take as well, which is particularly good if you've got cats, kids, something that moves around a lot. And a dedicated pro mode as well, where you can mess around with the likes of the shutter speed, ISO levels, white balance, etc. Although there's no direct support for RAW capture in this pro mode. And yeah, they've chucked in the fun mode as well for really fun people like myself to take fun photos like this.
And you've also got yourself an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle shooter and a 5 megapixel macro lens.
And the Galaxy A35 doesn't fall on its arse when you have to shoot a bit of home movie action either. You can capture 30 or 60 frames per second footage at full HD resolution, but if you boost up to 4K Ultra HD, as you can see there, maxes out at 30 FPS. I shot all of this test footage at the 4K resolution at 30 FPS, and the stabilization was good enough so it didn't look all jerky and shonky. Detail levels are respectable. At night time, it does an alright job as well. Doesn't absolutely cack itself in low light. And that audio pickup's pretty good as well, as long as things aren't too gusty and the background noise isn't too troublesome. And then last up, there's that 13 megapixel selfie shooter. And thankfully this doesn't capture too much detail, not every single wrinkle and sag and such forth. It can cope with a reasonably respectable range of conditions similar to that rear shooter. And yay, verily, you can shoot up to 4K resolution footage using that selfie shooter. Again, the audio pickup is respectable, and yeah. And there you have it, my lovelies. That in a tasty, delicious wee nutshell is the fresh new Samsung Galaxy A35 5G. And the performance, is not quite 100% fluid all of the time, but the battery life is solid and that camera tech is really rather bloody good. And it's good to see features like the IP67 water and dust resistance on here as well, which you don't even get out of quite a lot of more expensive mid-ranges. So overall, gotta say, I really rather like it, especially that £339 price point. And right now on the Samsung UK website, you get a free pair of Samsung Buds with your orders. You've also got trade-in options, all kinds of stuff. So let me know what you reckon of the Samsung Galaxy A35. You've been using it as your full-time blower as well. Please do poke, subscribe, ding that notifications bell for more on the latest and greatest tech, and have yourselves a ruddy, wonderful rest of the week. Cheers everyone, love you!